And we can learn hopefully from each other's experience. One of the things that, again, when I was a brand new agent, that gave me some comfort, I remember Amber saying in a class that you taught, I think it was you, tell me if I'm wrong, but she said she'd been doing this for like 25 years at that point. And she said, I always learn something in every transaction, and it's usually something new. So that gave me a lot of comfort, realizing that I didn't have to know everything, that I'm going to learn as I go. And knowing that I have brokers backing me really helps me feel comfortable that I can still take care of my clients while I learn. So something that happened to me recently, I was representing some out-of-state buyers. They were in California, not here for the whole transaction. And so they never even saw the house. The transaction had gone pretty smoothly until I got to the final walkthrough. And because they were out of state, I was filming everything for them. So I did the final walkthrough. And as I got to the basement, I noticed some weird things, like the sellers were painting some baseboards. And I could see that it was just certain baseboards, not all the baseboards. And then on one of the baseboards, I could see like a water line coming through the new paint. So as I investigated further, it was clear that there had been a flood. So this is Thursday night. We're supposed to close on Monday, and my buyers were signing the next day in California. So I immediately contacted the listing agent. She didn't know anything about it. And then the next day got back to me saying the sellers told her they forgot to let her know that there was a flood in the basement. They had left the sprinklers on overnight. The whole east side of the basement had a few inches of water. So they were planning to tell her, but they forgot. And that was a big bummer. And I mean, just stating the facts of the situation, you know, the sellers were trying to cover up something that had happened that really affected the condition of the house. And the buyers were obviously a little bit nervous about how the sellers were handling this. So we got some people in to give a quote about remediation, and we didn't have much time because the sellers hadn't disclosed anything to us until this point. So over the weekend, we tried to collect a bid from this remediation company, and then we asked the sellers to give us the amount of that bid. I had initially reached out to Becca Summers, who's one of our brokers, and she reminded me, this is all about section 10.3 of the REPC, where they have to deliver the house in substantially the same condition it was in at time of acceptance. So we were asking them for a credit for the buyers to restore the house to the condition it was in, but the sellers were unwilling to do that. And the listing agent not only seemed like they hadn't given the sellers a good education about what their duties and responsibilities were in the contract, but also was not very responsive to us. And so as we tried to negotiate over the weekend, we had a hard time getting responses from them. And then they just let the settlement deadline pass. And they weren't responding to us anymore. So Dean was on vacation, Joel was on vacation, Dan was at a golf tournament, Beckett was at a golf tournament, and yet they all responded to me in my questions. As soon as Joel got back into town the next day, he jumped onto an email thread with this agent and convinced her pretty quickly that it was in their best interest to engage with us and figure out a solution. And the other thing Joel did immediately that was super helpful is he reminded me, listen, it's not, you have to take asking for a concession out of it. It's all about the contractual duty of the seller to restore the house to the condition it was in. That's what the contract says. The seller's already on the hook for that. Don't muddy the waters by asking for any concession. Just go back to that contractual duty. Just stick to the contract. It's very cut and dried. And Joel did reminding the sellers of the same thing, the listing agent. So the listing agent was tricky throughout the process, got pretty emotional. And again, Joel was really good at just trying to remind everybody involved on the email chain, which now included the listing agent's attorney, that we need to be, as agents, very professional, take the emotion out of it for our clients and help our clients navigate this so that we can all come to a good outcome, which we did in the end. And that was such a relief. But there were some really scary moments in the meantime where I felt like I was in over my head. And I was really grateful that I had, number one, the backing of the contract, and most importantly, the backing of my broker and several brokers, in fact. So that helped me get through the situation and come to a successful resolution. What I learned from that was know the contract. I think we just talked about that again. Dean said a few times, know your REPSI, right? So knowing the contract, super important, but also educating clients about their responsibilities that are outlined in the contract. And for this situation, I felt like the listing agent had educated their clients more specifically about some of those duties. We would not even have had this issue. The same thing happened to me earlier in the year, and it wasn't even an issue because the listing agent had educated their clients and they just took care of it. And then the last thing I learned was it's really important, even when stakes are high, even when I might feel completely justified, even when I feel like someone else is wronging us, like keeping the emotion out of it for the clients is so important to help everybody work together and feel comfortable working together and feel comfortable trusting each other. So those are some good lessons that I had. Do you guys want to go in order?
Sure. I don't know.
That one's like quick recording.
Gotcha. So I can just set it down. All right. So yeah, trying to think back over 30 years and pick one or two things was really hard for me. But I actually went back to like really early on in my career. When I had a client that was a buyer that was buying a townhome. He was a single guy. He was a little bit of an odd duck. He was probably in his mid 40s. Just an interesting individual, never like warmed up, kind of guy, just kind of a little standoffish. And the day of closing, he called me up. We were supposed to close, I don't know, at 2 p.m. or something. He called me up that morning and he was like, I'm not going to close. And I was like, what? I was like, I'm new agent at the time. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. You have to close. And he's like, no, I'm not going to close. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? Like, explain to me what's going on. Like, and he's like, well, that hood over the stovetop doesn't work. And I'm looking at it and I'm walking around my own house at the time, we had just replaced the hood. I mean, this was a long time ago with a microwave. And I was like, you mean that $79 hood over the cooktop doesn't work? And he's like, yeah, I'm not going to close. And I'm like, I have a brand new one in my garage that we just took out. I will bring it to the closing. And he's like, he didn't know what to say. And I was like, seriously, I have a brand new one in my house. And he's like, well, and we went round and round and round for a little while and just trying to talk it through. And he's like, finally, what really came out was, what if I get married again? What if I meet someone and I get married again and she doesn't want to live in this house? And I was like, in my mind thinking, probably not going to happen. But at the same time thinking, all right, how do I calm this guy down? Like, I'm just like, you can always sell, like you can always sell this place, but it's really not about the hood over the cooktop. It's about something deeper. And that just taught me, like, a lot of times people do get super emotional about it and it seems really silly to us, but there's something deeper and we have to kind of figure out what that is. So that was one example.
I'm frustrated that Austin had the opportunity to poke fun at me for being here at this meeting and then scrambled out after he said his piece, because this one actually involves Austin. So I've sold a lot of new construction over the years, and this transaction was a new construction property where the buyer asked the builder that I represented to purchase the building lot and build a custom home for him. The building lot was very expensive for the market, and he wanted to build a very custom, unique home to him, which the builder obliged, but took, I don't know, somewhere in the range of $50,000 of earnest money, which we thought no one would ever walk away from $50,000. That's very secure. So the builder purchased the lot, built the home exactly the way the buyer stipulated, including their $16,000 black driveway. And at the end of closing, they said, hey, I'm getting a job relocation and I can no longer buy this house. So knowing the contract and understanding it, I just took a step back and said, hey, first off, can you provide a letter from your employer that says you're getting a job relocation so I can provide that to my seller to show them that you're getting this non-optional job relocation? He couldn't produce the letter because his employer wouldn't provide it. That would be fraud. So then the next step was he spent his down payment. He liquidated his 401k and paid off debt and tried to get a loan denial because he thought he understood the contract better than we did and tried to outsmart us by getting a loan denial. Well, what he doesn't understand is part of the loan process would allow him to borrow against his 401k. He was able to go back and borrow against that money for the down payment. And so Austin, the preferred lender, was still able to get him a loan regardless of how much he tried to get a loan denial. He thought he was just going to walk away from the 50,000 and that would be the liquidated damages. So we had to explain to him, hey, you actually can't get a loan denial. You still have a loan, so this provision's not going to save you in the purchase contract. So understanding the purchase contract in that scenario saved my client. Probably would have lost a couple $100,000 because it was a very unique home specifically built to this client. And back to Amber's concern was ultimately he just didn't like the home. After he spent all this time and money building it, it wasn't exactly what he thought it was going to be in his mind. So therefore he thought, you know what, I'm just going to walk away from this $50,000. And that was a learning lesson to me and to this builder. Hey, $50,000 may not be enough to save you in all scenarios. So strong earnest money in a transaction is important. The other one's a very quick story. It was new. I was new in the business and I got a lead. I went out, listed a property, somebody that I'd never met before. We listed it, got it under contract, sold. I get a call from the buyer's agent on the transaction, maybe a day or so after we funded and recorded. And she said, hey, my buyers want to unwind this deal. And I was like, funny, we funded and recorded. This is the transaction's done. And so I said, give me some more details. And she said, well, when my buyers moved into the house, the neighbors came over with the sump pumps that the seller gave them and said, I won't need these anymore, and gave them to the neighbor. The sump pumps were from a flooding issue that the seller did not disclose of a previous flood that had happened. And now the buyers were concerned that this was going to be an ongoing issue. And the neighbors were returning the gift of the sump pumps back to the buyers because they said, you're probably going to need these. I didn't know, still freaked me out, like how I got to pay back this commission. And so I said, hey, you know what? The transaction's done. I am obligated as the seller's agent to disclose something I knew. I did not. The seller did not disclose that to me. I couldn't disclose it in good faith to the buyer. So you and I are not involved. I gave them the seller's name and phone number and said, seller, you are now going to need to figure this out. You might need to get an attorney involved because this transaction's done. I did the marketing portion. I sold your property. Now it's time for you guys to figure this out. So understanding when to get involved and when not to get involved in a transaction is also important. Sometimes no good deed goes unpunished. So stay out of it if you can.
Can I ask a quick question? Joel, how do you make that distinction when to get involved and when not to get involved?
You and I have had a lot of these conversations. Just because you have an understanding of something, like I have a good understanding of construction, that doesn't mean I necessarily want to be the expert at all times in all things, because when I do, then I get looped in potentially if I was wrong or there was more going on. And so the advice that I typically give is do not get involved in a buyer's due diligence. If you do and you're trying to help them, gather some information, then make sure that you follow up with, hey, I spoke to this person at the city, put it in an email and say, but you need to, as part of your due diligence, follow up on this conversation and make sure the information that I have provided is in fact accurate. Because I can tell you, there's been a lot of times that Brad and I have done due diligence on stuff that even we have done as the buyer, that somehow the person at the city was wrong. And so you become the source of information. You also get looped into a lawsuit. So I'm super careful. If I am getting involved, I make sure to follow up with something in writing.
Thanks.
I've got this one here. Is this working all right? Can you hear it? Okay. Couple things that I had written down. Fortunately for me, I've never had like one of those major mistakes that I'm paying out of my pocket to make something right because I messed something up or whatever. But a couple things along the way that stick out to me over the years are, I had a listing once. Of course, there was a seller disclosure deadline. My client, the seller, agreed to provide certain things in Section 7 seller disclosures to the buyers by the seller disclosure deadline. And we did not do it. We did not give them the budget and the most recent minutes from HOA meetings. The day after the seller disclosure deadline came and had passed, get a cancellation from the buyer's agent citing seller default. And he said, we'll let you know if we intend to pursue any damages against the seller. Because we had not upheld our obligation to provide them with the HOA minutes and budget from the most recent meetings. And I was like, oh shoot, like this is bad. They didn't cancel because we didn't give them the minute and budgets. It almost felt like a business model from this buyer and their agent. But the lesson I learned was, when signing a listing, I'm no longer waiting to get the title report and the minutes and the budget taken care of. Like, get that in hand from upfront, so you're not in this type of situation where you're up against the seller disclosure deadline and can't perform. Another one. This was not a contractual issue, more of like just like a managing people issue on a deal. And fortunately, in our new purchase contract, this is addressed with holdover tenancy. But I had a seller, and he was probably mentally ill. And let's see, he was supposed to be out of the house at a particular date and time. I think the buyers gave us, a couple weeks at post closing to get him out of the house. And I'm checking in with them. Hey, are you going to be out? Are you going to be out? He's like, yep, Dan, I'll be out. Don't worry about it. And then 5 p.m. on the Sunday, when he was supposed to be out, the buyer's agent is calling me. I'm like, oh man, he's not out of the house, is he? And he was not out of the house. And so it became a huge thing. So just making sure that we understand even when the deal is closed, knowing when the seller needs to be out of the house, managing situations like that.
Wait a second. Tell us what you did when he wasn't out of the house.
I went over there the next day, and we were cleaning cat crap out of the garage, and just all the, just the lifetime of junk that he was unable to get out. And I think I actually did, probably paid for the dumpster. I'm like, hey, the buyers already had a dumpster there. I was like, let me help you pay for that type of thing. And he really appreciated that we showed up to help him get out of the house. But a little bit of a lack of awareness on my part. Deal was closed. I got paid. I kind of lost sight of, man, we need to make sure he's out of the house on whatever date and time. Next one. This is also not a contractual issue, but more of just like an awareness of making sure that the deal is going properly for your client. I had a cash buyer. They purchased a lot that they were going to build a custom home on. Everything went fine. 2 or 3 years later, I get an email from Nova Lee. She's like, "We have $5,000 of earnest money for this deal." I'm like, "You do? That's weird. Like, where did that come from?" And on a cash purchase, as you might know, you typically, as the buyer, you probably are closing with a title company that you don't typically work with, right? And so what happened is it was a $300,000 purchase amount. It was $5,000 of earnest money. The title company that we got strong-armed into using did not account for, on the settlement statement, the $5,000 of earnest money that the buyer had deposited. And then so at closing, he pays $300,000. And so we're just sitting on the $5,000 for literally a couple of years. So that was not, it was like, hey, good news and bad news. Bad news is we messed it up. The good news is I've got $5,000 for you from the earnest money that you paid, but that didn't go towards your purchase amount. So the lesson learned on that one for me was, although I don't feel like I need to like bust out my calculator and do the math on a settlement statement, because there's a lot of numbers on there, and it's to some degree you're just trusting that the title company knows what to put on there. It's never a bad idea just to double check things and get that settlement statement an extra set of eyes, and getting it to the client beforehand, so the first time they're seeing it is not at the closing table.
What they say.
Oh, he was cool. Yeah, he was. He was fine with it.
Would the title company need to like pay any interest on that for him, where they kind of messed up numbers?
Not that I'm aware of. We didn't go that direction. We just put it to bed.
I mean, would the title company have done something like that if they were the ones to do the error?
I don't know. Yeah, my last thought was just know what the contract says. Don't be passing stuff back and forth that you don't understand, and it can save you and your clients a lot of hassle, a lot of heartache, and just misunderstandings because you don't know when the earnest money was due with the active time clause or whatever it is. Just make sure you're doing your clients right by understanding the paperwork that you're actually using on a deal, not just guessing. I see a hand over here. Great question. No, the question was, do we need to know the builder's contracts as well? Oftentimes they're 20 pages, right? I do think we have an obligation to the client, to our buyers, to make sure we don't have it memorized, but like we need to know when the earnest money's due and is it refundable? And I do see stuff where it's like we don't even know when our client's earnest money is due or how refundable it is on these 20-page new construction purchase contracts. So but that doesn't absolve us from our fiduciary responsibilities to the client. We still need to read it and understand it.
Can I ask you guys a question? Thank you, first
Yes.
of all, for sharing your experiences. So when something happens and you learn a lesson, how do you incorporate that going forward? Is it something you can put into a system, or you just bank it in your personality and knowledge bank?
I like, I like systems. I like making sure all our information is collected up front, and we have checklists and we have spreadsheets and we have processes. Whether you're using a transaction coordinator or not, all of that stuff is just incredibly important. So yeah, we make adjustments when necessary based on these types of occurrences to our, I don't know, upfront data management, you might say.
I like to learn from pain one time. So I made a mistake as a newer agent in the business, and I conveyed acceptance to my brand new buyers that were so excited that they got their contract accepted. And then we got a call an hour later. We didn't get it in writing asking about the addendum that I checked, that there was a box, that there was an addendum. That's where our closing costs were at. And I failed to send that addendum because we made a modification right before I sent it to the Repsy. I didn't reprint the addendum, so I didn't ever ask for their closing costs. So I got them under contract in their mind. They were super excited for about an hour, and then I had to go back to them and say, actually, they're not going to accept your offer. I screwed up. So those are painful experiences when you're new in the business. And so you have to be honest when you make a mistake. That's first and foremost. You got that. That's something that's always going to be, but learn from your mistakes so they don't happen again.
Okay, I think it's important to realize that not all deals are savable, but a lot of them could be saved more efficiently, I guess, if we communicated with the other agent just like voice to voice. It makes a lot of difference in how we can connect with that agent and really get to the root of the matter of what is the problem. And one thing that over the years, just over time, once you start coming across deals where FHA, VA repairs come up over and over and over again, it's like, okay, before we list this house, seller, you're in a price range that is most likely going to be an FHA or VA buyer. You are going to make these repairs before we list because it's going to come up. You're going to have to do it anyway. Do it before we list, and it solves a lot of problems before they even come up. That's just one of the things. So just prepping your clients and prepping buyers too. Like I've had sellers where a buyer sent over a list 3 pages long, single spaced, of repairs they wanted the seller to do. Seller didn't even look at it. He just like threw it on the floor and said, no, I'm not doing any of this. So preparing your buyers I kind of tell them like prioritize 3 to 5 things off the inspection. If there are 3 to 5 things that are either legitimate repairs, safety issues, or like such deferred maintenance that it's now a repair, but not like upgrades. We're not talking about upgrades. We're not talking about things that are going to make your house, the way you want it. It's just making the house that you're buying functional. And preparing your buyers and sellers ahead of time just goes a long way.
Okay, thank you so much, first of all, for just sharing these experiences, lending your expertise, and always taking my phone calls. I really appreciate that a lot. I want to open it up now for you guys. Does anybody have any questions about anything that you've heard today or anything that you're working on that you think would benefit from this expertise?
Just this morning, I had a conversation with my sellers and we listed their home. We did a lot of work before. They trusted me to, to be their realtor, and I was so appreciative of that. And it was literally like the best case scenario of the buyer coming in and saying, we love the home immediately after it was listed. They're a cash buyer with an 18-day close. And I'm like, this is so amazing. Like, this is the best case scenario. But this morning, my client was so sad. And I'm like, how are you guys feeling about everything? Like, we signed tomorrow. They want to close a day early. They even wanted to close a day earlier. Like, everything went so well from my side. But the thing that we need to remember as realtors is that this is an emotional thing, like, especially for the woman, because that's her domain. If she's been a stay-at-home mom, which she was for all these years, she was so sad. She's like, it happened so fast, Sarah. Like, I can't believe, like, we're selling our home. And she was sad, but I was like jumping, so happy. And I said, let's talk this through. I said, I've been there. Like, selling a home is really emotional. And so sometimes what we think is a success isn't always what our clients are feeling. And I was just really grateful that I could be there because I'm about the same age as her. I've been through life like her, and I've sold homes, and it was a really emotional experience because it's where our memories are made. It's where we raised our kids, and she moved out of state. And it's like this whirlwind. She's like, we're experiencing all these chapters all at once. And I just don't even know how I feel about anything. And she was just sad. So I think that's something to consider, that our clients are usually sad when they're selling.
Managing client expectations, I'm learning, is a really good skill that you develop fast sometimes or slow sometimes, but I appreciated your insights. Any other questions before we go? Well, thanks again. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Amanda.
I really loved your story, and you gave a lot of praise to the brokers for helping you kind of manage that situation. But I just wanted to point out that, like, when it came down to it, you did the right thing for your seller. And I feel like, I don't know how you guys feel, but there are a lot of agents out there that maybe their paycheck would have been too important to point out that the buyer had, or the seller had done something wrong. So I guess just wanted to say kudos to you for being honest.
Thank you. I learn a lot. Joel said we've had a lot of conversations about staying in your lane and trying to, because we want to help our clients so much, and remembering what our role is and what we're really actually licensed and qualified to do is really important. But I think some of my big takeaways from today are: know the contract. That has been a theme in a lot of stories. And also know our clients and understand, remembering our role, not only what we're licensed and qualified to do, but also our role as the fiduciary for our clients in helping them to navigate a situation that's even trickier for them than it usually is for us, you know. So these guys are great examples to me of people who put clients first all the time and really represent the best of the business. So thank you so much again for your time. Yeah.
Client says, you deal with the agent and find them something that like them not go back to the contract. Have you ever had that?
So I actually had that this last week, kind of, this buyer, we got the inspection, everything back, and we were like, you know, there's like $12,000 worth of legitimate repairs that need to be done to this house. It's a 25-year-old house. Some things had just been neglected for a little bit. And so my buyer said, let's talk about it. Like, here's my bottom line. I need to get at least, you know, a certain dollar amount out of the seller to make this make sense for me to buy this house. And so I start that conversation with the listing agent and just let's talk about it. Here are their concerns, and you know, I'll email them the list of things and what's come up. But this is a rough estimate of what it's going to cost to repair these items. We're coming up with around 12, 13 grand. Would you split it? Can we do 6,500? The seller, you know, just talking back and forth, the seller was like, absolutely not. Zero, no dollars, nothing. And I was like, wait, what? You know, that sounds a little weird. And then come to find out, again, everybody's motivation is a little bit different. This listing agent told me, oh, by the way, the husband really didn't want to sell the house. He wanted to keep it as a rental. The wife wants to sell it. So the husband's resisting everything. And I'm like, okay, but look at the list of repairs that we're asking for. Any tenant or any other buyer is going to ask for a door that locks, right? Like legitimate plumbing repairs that need to be made. A tenant is not going to settle for that. And other things, there were concrete repairs and other things. And so then a day went by. We had 2 more days on our due diligence. He came back and he said, I got him to agree to $700 for the doors. And I'm like, that's not good enough. You know, we had a leg to stand on. If we didn't have a leg to stand on, if we were just making things up, then that would be a different story. But we had a leg to stand on. These were legitimate repairs that any other buyer or tenant would ask for. We got him to $4,000 just by kind of like holding our ground and staying persistent with it. Like, no, $700 is not going to cut it. It's not enough. So we got him to $4,000, which just this weekend.
Great. Thanks again for your time and have a great week, everybody.